and welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, you don't need to like, follow or subscribe. Just put the videos out there where I can. Have a jolly good time doing it. And in today's video, it's a mess. Not really. We're on the second loop now, and we're going to get this super elevation going again, and we're going to try a slightly different tactic for it. So let's get all this stuff cleaned up and get stuck into it. Okay. I wasn't super impressed with the first attempt at doing our positive camber, if you like, or super elevation that we did to the track, meaning that when we have a curved piece of track and the train's going around, we sort of just end up banking that track up a little bit so it sort of curves around and makes for a smoother, realistic operation. So our friend Mr. Charles from Chadwick Model Railway talked about having pieces of plastic that were 1/2 mil, and then he would have them at 1 mil going around, so it would sort of gradiently come up to that. So the hardest thing is finding plastic where I live, and the next thing is finding it that is 1/2 mil. And then I found this. Now, while it's clear, we're not too worried about that. This is definitely 1/2 mil plastic. So I says to myself, it's pretty pliable, it doesn't have a smell, and we only need to cut some thin strips to run it in. So here's my theory for how this is going to work. The rainbow connection. Well, not quite. So what I've taken here is I've got some 4th radius track here. This is Hornby 4th radius. And I also have some Hornby 3rd radius. And the whole idea is, as you can see here, this is rather informal, but we've basically just marked it out onto our piece of plastic, and we're just going to cut these strips out. Remember, as you can see, this is a very pliable and movable type of plastic, and we are going to lay that loop down using flex track, not fixed track. But we're basically working around this type of geometry as well. So the whole idea is we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut these little strips out, and the strips would literally be sitting under the outer part of each rail accordingly. Now, because it is 1/2 mil, to get us to that 1 mil unit of measurement, which I understand is prototypically correct for the 00 scale, we can literally just take 2 and then stack it on top of each other, giving us the 1 mil rise. And that should look pretty half decent, I think, at the end of the day. So we've got a bit more drawing out, a lot of cutting up to do, and then we'll slap it on down and see how we go. Should this be the necessary success I want it to be, we will certainly probably go back to the first loop and recorrect it accordingly. Okay, so we've returned from chopping them up. I've left a few more on the template should we need to do some more, but that seems unlikely. So what we've got here is these tremendous strips for a 3rd radius, of which these are, and then our 4th radius with all of the strips I should need for that based on some rather rudimentary calculations. And the whole idea is, in this particular loop, as opposed to the other one that has the 3rd track traveling down under to the fiddle yard, we're not going to argue with the logic. We're just going to clip the Hornby track together and use that as our guide, and then we'll run our flex track following that and come along. And of course, what we're going to do is lay some of this down, and of course we can always nip it, cut it into smaller pieces to get it where we want, but we're basically aiming to lay it onto the outside of the rail. So we'll be able to lay it down, put our track down, and what we're going to do as we build the curve up, remember these are 1/2 millimeter, so as we're getting now to the more serious part of the curve here, we'll be able to take 2 and basically put them on top of each other, which will give us a full mil on that inclination and should look rather prototypical. So again, we'll use the 1/2 mil to lead us into it for about 20 centimeters, and then we'll build up to the main one. Now, of course, it's only very subtle, but as I keep referring to, when we start coming down to a scale model, every little detail does start to add up and draw your eye in even further. Okay, let's move some of this stuff out of the way here and get started, shall we? Geez, I can really move swiftly when I want to, can't I? Okay, so we've got our nice clear cork base. Here we start gluing it down. I'm just attaching it with the copy decks
I've been sticking with that. It's not too bad if we do ever need to lift up. Petroleum depot is well in construction. So you can see it's a bit of a switchback as we go from the left to the right, coming around that S-bend, and you can sort of see as I've inclined it. Here comes our Coca-Cola train, stacking and gently moving. I'm basically laying one section of track at a time. Both lines, but one length as we move on. And here we are, moving up onto our magnificent tapered incline as we come to the top now. And here we've laid our point, and that is the last bit of connection we are just waiting on now. We also just tidied up that petroleum depot, and ta-da!
Well, there we are. One completed second loop, the Fawlty Towers loop, which is what we should call it. And of course, we have achieved our super elevation. We've got this beautiful, nice gap in between, so we've got no problem since we're not really doing anything else on this particular section, so plenty of room. All of our coaches run along smoothly. If you just look in this next picture, there's a little bit of a kick out here where we have to open it up to achieve our curve on that upper level. And also, if you look closely, I've also used that secondary section there with the siding. Again, it's just a manual point that's being used up here because that siding isn't really actually going to be used, if ever. I've just left this building here just to get some measurements, but I do quite like these backline sort of buildings and the facade that they give. I may well illuminate it as well. The other thing is I do have another one because I think something else is going to sit here. This one is from the Barkman or Backman range, as you may well pronounce it. And it's one of the Scenecraft ones. So a bit like the Scaledale stuff that Hornby does, it's pre-done and ready to go. And I absolutely have no problems with that whatsoever. Might make a few little tweaks and adjustments here and there, but what I'm happy with is it can just go on and we can carry on. Remember, I'm not trying to build an ultra prototypical layout here, just something as good as if you were to walk into a department store back in the days at Christmas time and there was one set up with some reasonable type of landscaping demonstrating what your imagination can possibly achieve. That's what it is. It's all about functionality, simplicity, and enjoyment for me. And we'll just bring the camera in now for some nice close-up shots to show how this positive camber or super elevation has turned out. And I'm exceptionally happy with the way the entire thing does flow. A couple of quick things to point out, of course, include the whoopsie daisy I made with the trapdoor, trying to copy what I was doing on the Dad's Army loop on the other side. And that is, I made the cut that it was supposed to work like this, giving the whole arm access to everywhere underneath. I can still get in with great difficulty, but why would I have cut this section out here when I can just crawl underneath and come straight under? Silly me. The other thing you may be questioning is what's going on with this section here. Well, the whole idea is I was thinking from where the entrance of the car park would be and coming out, there could also be a little footpath that comes across here for pedestrian access that can sort of wander off in that direction. So what happens with the landscaping on this one? Well, as I said, Fawlty Towers, I basically want to build it up a little bit so that you've basically got that mountainous cutout of rock face that will sort of carry on around the bottom here, with the hotel sort of sitting up this way a little bit more, probably with some sort of a roadway that would, I was aiming for sort of coming across this way and sweeping out onto the car park, possibly in this configuration, and the hotel going like that. Again, I haven't got any key instructions. I'm just basically going to take all the key photos that I've noticed from the actual TV show and just try and roundabout to come up with something. Again, the black and white type of building, the archways over the doorways, it's pretty much it. It doesn't have to be 100%, but enough by the time I've done that particular shaped sign and put some letters on it, you basically know what I'm trying to do. A bit of hedge work and scenery around here will sort of disguise this, and by the time it's sort of up and above looking over the railway, it's probably not a bad prototypical type of location for what could actually be facilitating this area. Again, I'll probably make something so that the mountain or whatever it's sitting on will lift up, taking this with it, so you've got a grounding point, so you can always access to bring extra cables and wires and whatever else you need through it. And I can assure you that this is probably well down the track in the progress of this particular model railway layout. Probably one of the last key construction pieces I want to get underway.
unless something changes. In the meantime, we only have about half a metre of track that now needs joining now, and then we will have a completed circuit, and we may well get to see a train running around it very soon. This type of super elevation that we've done using this particular type of plastic, an absolute success. So much so that we're going to go back to the first loop, which I think was a little bit of a disaster for the top section of track that was being laid. And we're going to go around and we're going to recorrect it all. Also because I've noticed a couple of little anomalies where there's a couple of bits that are just literally a millimetre too tight. And there is a slight possibility the coaches, if running at speed, may bump together. So we're going to go back, clean all that up and carry on. As always, thank you so much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Stay safe. Toodles.